The alarm bells have rung. The sun is finally about to set on the British Empire. The economic indicators in the UK are concerning. Inflation has considerably decreased since reaching a peak of over 11% in October last year. However, the most recent headline figure of 3.9% is still nearly double the Bank of England's 2% target. The Bank of England suggests that the UK's economic growth is slowing and is anticipated to stay sluggish for an extended period. Though unemployment is still at a relatively low level, it is gradually increasing. Are we about to see the economic demise of Britain and how this might impact the entirety of Europe? This is what we'll explore in today's video. Britain's GDP stands at $46,400. At first glance, this individualized measure of wealth may seem more equitable and precise. However, sometimes this apparent wealth is nothing more than a mirage. Britain's economic journey is a captivating narrative spanning centuries, characterized by periods of rapid growth, innovation, and transformation. From its agricultural origins to the heights of the Industrial Revolution and the intricacies of the modern global economy. The nation is home to several top-tier universities and companies that keep it at the forefront of emerging technologies like AI and vaccines. Nevertheless, wealth is heavily concentrated in the frequently visited southeast, constituting 47% of its GDP with just 37% of the population. Despite these strengths, Britain's economy has struggled since the financial crisis over a decade ago in 2008, marked by sluggish productivity and low wages. Recently, it surrendered its position as the world's fifth-largest economy to India. The past few months have been challenging for the United Kingdom, with soaring energy prices and national inflation surpassing double digits. A substantial 60% of adults find their financial situation worse compared to the beginning of 2022. This predicament can be attributed to Britain's stagnant growth machine. The low-growth economy not only continually diminishes the country's living standards, but also compels everyone to bear higher taxes for deteriorating public services. Moving on to the discussion, another issue is that prices have stayed high for a long time, causing the biggest drop in how well people live in the past 2 years. Ben Zaranko, who works at a place called the Institute for Fiscal Studies, said both main parties more or less agree on their plans for money rules, spending, and taxes. This means that no matter who becomes the head money person after the big election, they won't have many options because they have to follow rules to make sure debt goes down compared to the country's overall money in 5 years. Furthermore, the UK's economic growth in the last 15 years has been below what we usually see in history, and the GDP per person is just a bit more than 4% higher than it was in 2008. This is a sharp drop compared to the 40% increase in the 15 years before that. It's crucial to recognize that big economies in Western Europe have also slowed down a lot recently. There's a common agreement in politics that slow growth is a big problem on its own. It makes it much harder for the government to achieve almost anything they want. Low levels of building new houses, especially in places where many people want to live, really hold back growth. This happens because of a strict, localized planning system. Also, big projects to build new things take too much time and cost too much money. On top of all that, Brexit is definitely making growth slower. Small improvements in how the UK trades with the European Union are probably not enough to bring the big improvements in growth that are needed. The state of the UK education system also raises concerns, facing challenges on all fronts, with schools grappling with both financial shortages and a shortage of teachers. Simultaneously, the National Health Service is showing signs of deterioration. For an extended period, the UK has allocated less money to healthcare compared to similarly prosperous nations, excluding the US, which stands as a global exception with per capita health spending more than double. However, Britain also allocates less money per person for health compared to several countries, including Canada, Australia, France, Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany, and others. This shouldn't come as a surprise. Over the last 3 decades, the British economy prioritized finance over industry. The government leaned towards austerity rather than investment, and voters opted for a closed and less affluent economy over an open and wealthier one. Moving ahead, the labor market, once a positive aspect, is now showing signs of instability. Strikes are spreading, with nurses, firefighters, and railway workers demanding higher wages to cope with the surging cost of living. It's akin to a pit crew putting down their tools out of frustration. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has cast a long and chilling shadow over the UK's economic recovery. The war has sent shockwaves through global energy markets, pushing up oil and gas prices to unprecedented levels. This, in turn, has intensified inflationary pressures, squeezing both businesses and consumers. Additionally, the war has disrupted supply chains, particularly for vital commodities like wheat and fertilizer, impacting food security and adding to inflation concerns. The human toll of the war is immeasurable, but its economic consequences are undeniable, overshadowing the UK's already fragile economy. The UK's exit from the European Union remains a source of friction and uncertainty as well. While some sectors have adapted and thrived outside the bloc, others face significant challenges. Increased bureaucracy, intricate customs procedures, and differing regulations have hindered trade, especially for smaller businesses. The loss of access to the European single market has also affected some sectors, particularly those reliant on cross-border talent and investment. While the long-term effects of Brexit are still not fully understood, its immediate consequences have undoubtedly contributed to the UK's economic slowdown. The combined impact of these internal and external challenges paints a stark picture. The UK's economy is contracting. The International Monetary Fund forecasts a 0.6% contraction in 2024, making the UK the sole G7 country with negative growth. This follows years of sluggish growth, highlighting the underlying structural weaknesses in the economy. The shrinking national output translates to lower tax revenues, adding strain to public finances and limiting the government's ability to invest in critical areas like infrastructure and social services. Due to extensive cuts in public spending, poverty has risen in the country, particularly child poverty. Before the financial constraints, governments led by both the Conservative and Labour parties made strides in addressing childhood poverty. The number of minors in relative poverty decreased by approximately 34%, reaching 27% between 1998 and 2012. However, the positive trend started to reverse in 2012, coinciding with the passage of the Welfare Reform Act in Parliament, a central element of austerity. Since then, around 600,000 children have slipped back into relative poverty. Presently, 4.2 million children in the UK live in poverty, equating to 1 in 3 children. This significant figure is noteworthy for a supposedly affluent country like the UK. The problem extends beyond the government's reluctance to acknowledge the decline as a challenge. It involves their outright denial of it. They persist in convincing themselves that the nation's prosperity remains unshaken. Right-wingers adopt this stance fueled by patriotic fervor, while left-wingers embrace it to advocate for increased spending. Post-Brexit, immigration, exports, and foreign investments have all dwindled, likely diminishing the size of the UK's economy in the long run. The UK serves as an example for other countries grappling with a trio of challenges: de-industrialization, degrowth, and the denigration of foreigners. Having moved industry offshore in favor of finance, the UK's economy lacked resilience. The deterioration of people's living standards intensified their search for someone to blame. In a nutshell, the UK is facing serious economic problems. After Brexit, things like immigration, exports, and foreign investment have gone down, making the country's economy smaller. The UK used to have far more factories, but now it mostly relies on finance, and this change has made its economy weaker. People's lives are getting harder due to a lack of money for important things, especially for kids. Even before these problems, the government decided to cut spending a lot, which led to more people, especially children, being poor. Before these cuts, both Conservative and Labour governments had made progress in reducing child poverty, but in 2012, they changed some laws that caused around 600,000 kids to become poor again. Now, about 4.2 million children in the UK are living in poverty. But the worrying part is that the government doesn't want to admit these problems and acts like everything is fine. We'll have to wait and see how the UK fares in the years to come. If you want more economic insights, do like and subscribe to the channel, and watch this video next about Poland and the war in Ukraine.